There is a place within you that no chaos can reach, no storm can disturb. It is not in the future, not in the past, but here, now. If you stop just for a moment and listen not with your ears, but with your whole being, you will feel it. The silent space between your thoughts, the pause between your breaths, the stillness beneath all movement. That is peace, and it has never left you. You do not need to chase it, you do not need to seek it, you only need to notice that it is already here, right now. Become aware of your breath. Feel the air as it moves in and out. Don't try to change it, just observe. The mind may wander, but the moment you notice this, you are free. Because in that noticing, you step outside of thought and into presence. In this space, worry dissolves, and all that remains is what is. Pure, simple, untouched. Do not wait for peace to come when circumstances change. Do not postpone it for when the world aligns with your desires. Peace is not given by the world, and so the world cannot take it away. It is the essence of what you are beneath the noise of the mind. It is the depth of stillness behind every sound, the quiet behind every word. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness watching them. Peace is not something that exists outside of you, waiting to be found in a future moment, a different circumstance, or a better version of yourself. It is not something to be earned, achieved, or created. It has been within you all along, untouched by the chaos of the world or the fluctuations of your mind. It is the quiet space beneath every thought, the stillness behind every emotion, the presence that remains even when everything else seems to shift and change. Yet most people search for it outside themselves, believing it will come when their problems are solved, when life becomes easier, when they have more time, more success, more stability. But peace does not exist in the future. It does not depend on external conditions aligning with your desires. It has always been here, waiting for you to notice it. The mind creates an illusion that peace is something to be attained through effort, as if it were a goal to be reached rather than a state that simply exists. It tells you that once you have eliminated all problems, found the perfect balance, or resolved every unfinished part of your life, then you will be at peace. But this is a trap, because the nature of the mind is to always find something else to fix, something else to worry about, something else to chase. It keeps peace just out of reach, convincing you that it lies in the next moment, the next achievement, the next solution. And so you remain in a cycle of seeking, never realizing that what you are looking for is not something to be gained, but something to be uncovered. The only reason peace feels distant is that the mind is too loud. The constant stream of thoughts, worries, and distractions creates the illusion that peace is absent, but in reality it is merely obscured. Just as the sky remains untouched by the passing clouds, peace is not disturbed by the passing clouds. Peace is only hidden beneath it. The moment you step back and observe, the moment you allow yourself to be still and simply witness what is happening within you, you will begin to feel it. Not because you have created it, but because you have stopped looking elsewhere and have allowed yourself to become aware of what has always been present. Silence is the doorway to this awareness. When you stop and listen, not to the thoughts, but to the space between them, you begin to sense the presence that has been there all along. It is subtle at first, like a whisper beneath the noise, but the more you rest in it, the more you recognize it as your true state of being. This is not a state you need to sustain through effort. It is not something you need to hold on to or protect. It is what remains when you no longer identify with the movement of the mind. It is the stillness that exists before thought arises and after thought fades. The realization that peace is already within you changes everything. It means you are no longer dependent on external circumstances to bring you what you have been searching for. It means you do not need to wait for things to be perfect before you can feel at ease. It means that in any moment, regardless of what is happening around you, you have access to something deeper, something unshaken by the ever-changing conditions of life. This is the greatest freedom, to know that nothing outside of you has the power to take away what is already yours. The mind is constantly moving, always pulling attention toward what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. It creates stories, builds expectations, and clings to memories, making it seem as though peace is always just beyond reach. The past brings regret, nostalgia, or unresolved emotions, while the future brings worry, anticipation, or the illusion that something more is needed before you can truly be at ease. But in reality, neither the past nor the future exist outside of thought. They are only mental constructs kept alive by the mind's habit of dwelling in them. The present moment, however, is the only thing that is real. It is the only place where life is actually happening. The moment you bring your attention fully into the now, something shifts. The weight of past burdens dissolves, and the anxiety of the unknown disappears. There is only this breath, this sensation, this awareness of being alive. Nothing else is required in this moment. The mind may resist this simplicity, insisting that there is something more important to figure out, something to analyze or fix. But if you observe closely, you will see that all of this is simply mental noise, distractions that pull you away from the stillness that is already present. When you truly pay attention to the now, you step out of the endless cycle of thinking and into a space where peace naturally arises. This is not a peace that depends on everything being perfect. It is a peace that exists beyond circumstances. It does not require you to have solved all your problems or achieved a particular state of being. It is always available because it is inseparable from life itself. But to experience it, you must be willing to let go of the mind's habit of seeking elsewhere. There is a quiet power in simply noticing where you are right now, the way the air feels against your skin, the sounds that exist in the background, the subtle rhythm of your breath. These details are always present, but they are often overlooked because the mind is too busy to notice them. Yet the moment you bring awareness to them, something deep within relaxes. There is no need to judge, interpret, or label what is happening. Just witness it as it is. Just as it is, in doing so, you step into a different state of being, one that is not controlled by thought, but anchored in direct experience. This is why presence is the key to peace. The mind is restless, always trying to move forward or pull you back, but the present moment does not ask for anything. It does not demand that you be someone different, that you fix something before you can feel whole. It simply invites you to be here as you are, without resistance. And the moment you say yes to this invitation, the struggle ends. The tension that comes from identifying with the mind's endless movement disappears, and all that remains is the quiet awareness that has been here all along. To be fully present does not mean that thoughts disappear entirely. It means that they no longer pull you away from what is real. Even as thoughts arise, you can watch them without getting lost in them. You can observe the mind's tendency to wander without believing that it must be followed. In this space of awareness, the grip of worry and distraction loosens, and what remains is a deep, unshaken sense of calm. It is not something that needs to be created. It is something that is revealed the moment attention returns to where life is actually unfolding, right here, right now. The breath is always present, always moving, yet it is often ignored. It happens without effort, without needing to be controlled, and without demanding attention. But the moment you bring awareness to it, something shifts. The mind, which is usually scattered, begins to settle. The constant noise of thoughts starts to fade into the background. The body, which may have been holding tension, begins to relax. This is because the breath is a bridge between the mind and the present moment, a direct path to stillness that requires nothing but awareness. When attention is placed on the breath, the mind has no choice but to follow. Thoughts may continue to arise, but they lose their grip. Instead of being pulled into mental stories, awareness is anchored in something real, something immediate. The simple act of observing the breath creates space between you and your thoughts. This space is where peace naturally arises. It is not something to be forced or manufactured. It is what remains when attention is no longer consumed by the endless stream of mental activity. Breathing happens in the present moment. Unlike thoughts, which constantly pull you into the past or project you into the future, the breath is always now. By focusing on it, you align yourself with the only place where life truly exists. This alignment is powerful because it dissolves the illusion that peace has always been here, waiting to be noticed. The breath is not just a physical process, it is a reminder of presence, a tool that can instantly reconnect you to what is real. Observing the breath does not require effort. It is not about controlling the way you breathe or forcing yourself to take deeper breaths. It is simply about noticing the rise and fall of the chest, the coolness of air entering the nostrils, the warmth as it leaves. These sensations are subtle, yet they have the power to pull awareness out of thought and into direct experience. And in this direct experience, there is no worry, no stress, no resistance, only the simplicity of being. There is a natural rhythm to breathing, one that reflects the flow of life itself. Just as the breath moves in and out without needing to be controlled, so too does life. The inhale brings energy, the exhale releases what is no longer needed. This continuous cycle mirrors the balance that exists in everything. When you observe it, you begin to sense a deeper intelligence at work, something beyond the thinking mind. It becomes clear that just as the body breathes on its own, peace also exists on its own. It does not need to be created, it only needs to be seen. The breath is always available, no matter where you are or what is happening. It does not depend on external conditions, which means peace does not either. Even in moments of stress, uncertainty, or difficulty, the breath remains steady, offering an anchor to the present moment. By bringing awareness to it, you step outside of the mental noise and into a space where clarity exists. This clarity does not come from thinking more, solving problems, or trying to fix anything. It comes from stepping back, from noticing that beneath all the movement of the mind, there is something still, something untouched by whatever is happening. Each breath is a reminder that life is happening now. It is an invitation to return to what is real, to let go of the distractions of the mind and to rest in the simplicity of awareness. The more often you bring attention to the breath, the more familiar this state of peace becomes. It is not something separate from you. It is not something that comes and goes. It is always here, just beneath the surface, waiting to be noticed. The mind is constantly producing thoughts, shaping perceptions, and drawing conclusions. It moves from one idea to the next, replaying the past, imagining the future, analyzing, judging, and creating endless mental narratives. It is a restless stream, always seeking something to hold on to, always searching for meaning within its own creations. But in the midst of this movement, there is something deeper, something untouched by thought, something that remains when all mental activity quiets. This is awareness, the silent observer that watches the thoughts without becoming entangled in them. Most people live their entire lives identifying with their thoughts, believing that they are the mind and everything it produces. They feel happy when thoughts are pleasant and suffer when thoughts are troubling. They react to whatever the mind tells them, as if every passing thought were the absolute truth. But the moment awareness shifts from being lost in thought to observing thought, everything changes. There is a sudden realization that thoughts are not who you are. They are simply events passing through consciousness, like clouds moving across the sky. Some thoughts are heavy, some are light, some bring joy, some bring fear, but none of them define you. When this realization occurs, a space opens up between you and the mind. Instead of being pulled into every mental story, you can step back and witness them. The mind may say, this is a problem, this should not be happening, or I need to fix this before I can feel at peace. But instead of believing these thoughts, you can observe them with curiosity. You begin to see that the mind is like a machine running patterns based on past conditioning. It repeats familiar fears, expectations, and desires, not because they are true, but simply because that is what it has been programmed to do. The more closely you observe, the more you realize that these patterns are not personal, they are simply habits of thought that have been reinforced over time. The power of detachment is not in pushing thoughts away, suppressing them, or trying to control them. It is in recognizing that thoughts have no inherent power unless they are believed. The moment you stop identifying with them, they lose their ability to create suffering. Even negative thoughts, even fearful thoughts, lose their grip when they are seen for what they are. Temporary movements in the mind, not ultimate reality. This does not mean that thoughts stop appearing. The mind continues to function, producing ideas, memories, and concepts. But instead of being controlled by it, you now have a choice. You can engage with a thought if it is useful, or you can let it pass without attachment. You can allow emotions to arise without resisting them, knowing that they too are temporary. Everything that appears in the mind eventually fades, but the awareness that observes it remains unchanged. The more you practice witnessing thoughts rather than being absorbed in them, the more peace arises naturally. No longer caught in the turbulence of the mind, you begin to experience life from a place of stillness. Situations that once created stress no longer have the same effect because they are no longer filtered through the mind's conditioned reactions. There is clarity, a deeper intelligence that does not come from thinking, but from presence itself. When identification with thought drops away, life is no longer dictated by the ups and downs of the mind. You do not have to wait for thoughts to be positive in order to feel at peace. Peace is not dependent on what the mind is doing. It is already present beneath it. The only thing needed is to recognize this truth, to see that the one watching the mind is free from the mind's limitations. In this freedom, there is nothing to chase, nothing to resist, nothing to fix. There is only the quiet awareness that has been there all along, untouched by the ever-changing movements of thought. Resistance is the root of much of the suffering people experience. It is not the external situation itself that creates distress, but the mind's refusal to accept what is happening. Resistance appears in many forms: frustration, anxiety, anger, regret, all of which arise when reality does not match the mind's expectations or desires. But this resistance does not change what has already happened. It does not undo the present moment. It only creates inner conflict, a tension between what is real and what the mind wishes were real. The nature of life is change, unpredictability, and movement. No moment remains the same, no situation is permanent, and nothing unfolds exactly according to plan. Yet the mind clings to certainty, to control, to the illusion that it can shape reality to fit its preferences. When something unwanted happens, resistance rises automatically, as if fighting against what is will somehow undo it. But all resistance does is create suffering. It does not solve the situation, nor does it provide clarity. It only strengthens the illusion that peace is impossible unless circumstances change. The moment resistance is recognized for what it is, a reaction of the mind rather than a reflection of reality, its power weakens. There is a space between what happens and how one chooses to respond. In that space, there is the freedom to either resist or accept. Acceptance does not mean liking or agreeing with everything that happens. It does not mean passivity or lack of action. It simply means seeing reality as it is, without adding layers of mental resistance on top of it. When something unwanted happens, the mind's first instinct is to argue against it. This shouldn't have happened, it's not fair, I can't handle this. But none of these thoughts change what already is. They only create inner turmoil, making it harder to see clearly and respond effectively. When acceptance replaces resistance, suffering dissolves. The situation itself may remain the same, but the inner struggle disappears. Instead of reacting with frustration, there is openness. Instead of being consumed by resentment, there is clarity. Acceptance allows presence to emerge, and in presence there is peace. This peace is not dependent on circumstances. It exists because there is no longer a fight against reality. It does not mean giving up or being indifferent. It means responding from a place of awareness rather than reacting from a place of resistance. The mind often resists acceptance because it believes that if something is not fought against, it will never change. But the paradox is that true change comes from acceptance, not resistance. When the mind is clouded by struggle, it cannot see clearly. It reacts impulsively, driven by fear, anger, or frustration. But when there is acceptance, there is space. In that space, wisdom arises. The most effective actions do not come from a place of resistance, but from a place of clarity. Acceptance is not weakness. It is the deepest form of strength. It is the willingness to be with what is, fully and without resistance, and to move forward from a place of inner peace rather than inner turmoil. The body also responds to resistance. Tension builds, breath becomes shallow, stress rises. The moment resistance is released, the body relaxes. There is a deep exhale, a loosening of the grip that was holding on to control. This is not just a mental shift. It is a full release from the burden of struggling against what cannot be changed. And in that release, peace is not something that needs to be found. It is simply revealed. It has been there all along, hidden beneath the layers of resistance that made it seem so distant. When resistance falls away, peace is what remains, untouched, unshaken, already present. Gratitude has the power to shift perception instantly. The mind is conditioned to focus on what is lacking, what is missing, what could be better. It is always searching for something more, something different, something that will finally bring a sense of fulfillment. But in this endless pursuit, it overlooks what is already present. It takes for granted the simple yet profound gifts that exist in every moment. Gratitude is not about forcing a positive mindset or ignoring difficulties. It is about recognizing the fullness of life as it is, without needing anything to be different. The present moment contains countless things to be grateful for, but the mind often dismisses them as unimportant. The breath, the beating of the heart, the ability to see, to hear, to feel. The foundation of existence itself is a miracle, yet it is rarely acknowledged. The warmth of the sun, the sound of the wind, the stillness of the night. Each moment is filled with beauty, but when the mind is consumed by wanting, it remains blind to it. Gratitude does not require something extraordinary to happen. It is the simple act of bringing awareness to what is already here, noticing what is often overlooked. The moment gratitude arises, discontent disappears. It is impossible to be truly grateful and dissatisfied at the same time. Gratitude brings the mind out of its habitual state of lack and into space of abundance. Instead of dwelling on what is missing, it begins to see what is present. This shift is not just a mental exercise, it is a deep recognition that peace is not found in acquiring more, but in appreciating what is already given. The mind may say, I will be happy when I achieve this, when I get that, when things go my way. But gratitude reveals that fulfillment has nothing to do with the future. It is already available, waiting to be noticed. Gratitude does not deny difficulties. It does not ignore pain or pretend that challenges do not exist, but it does change the way they are experienced. Even in difficult moments, there is always something to appreciate, a lesson learned, a moment of stillness, the kindness of another. Gratitude does not mean denying hardship, but rather shifting focus to what is still good, still beautiful, still meaningful. This shift does not change the external situation, but it transforms the internal experience of it. Instead of being consumed by negativity, there is a deeper sense of perspective. The practice of gratitude is simple, yet profoundly powerful. It does not require anything external to change. It only requires attention. Even in the most ordinary moments, there is something to be thankful for. The way light filters through a window, the taste of a meal, the presence of a loved one. These are not small things. They are life itself. When gratitude becomes a habit, it transforms not just moments, but the entire way life is experienced. No longer waiting for something to be different, there is contentment in what is. The mind often searches for peace in the future, believing that once certain conditions are met, then everything will be okay. But gratitude reveals that peace is already here. It is not found in chasing more, but in recognizing enough. The more gratitude is cultivated, the less the mind clings to wanting, and the more it settles into presence. This presence is where true peace exists, not in the fulfillment of desires, but in the deep recognition that there is nothing missing in this moment. Peace is not something to be chased, nor is it something that exists in the distant future. It is already present beneath the noise of the mind, waiting to be recognized. The moment awareness shifts from thought to presence, from resistance to acceptance, from seeking to gratitude, peace naturally arises. It is not dependent on circumstances, nor is it something to be earned. It is the essence of being itself. When identification with thoughts fades, when resistance dissolves, when gratitude becomes the lens through which life is seen, there is nothing left to fight, nothing missing, nothing to fix. What remains is the stillness that has always been there, untouched by the movements of the mind. Peace is not found, it is revealed.